let's look at the numbers. All right, cast and crew are leading the way with 11 mentions. Moms are holding strong with 3 shout-outs. God, creator of the universe, 0 mentions. And Mario Lopez, host of Access Hollywood, 1. All right.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Christ and Culture Podcast. I'm Cameron Prince, your host. And if this is your first episode listening to this podcast, I welcome you with great regard and that you're using your time to listen to this. And if just the heads up, if you want to go listen to our first episode about how the tragedy of Charlie Kirk should encourage or demand Christians to respond and to be more vocal in the world today, then click the card right there. Or maybe it's over here. I don't know. But the video you just saw was Nikki Glaser, who is a female comedian who has gotten a lot more popular around Comedy Central and the comedy world, and especially in the culture of Hollywood. And if you've ever seen the roast of Tom Brady, the roast of Shaquille O'Neal, you know, those series of roasts, she's been really prevalent, and those were the first times that I've ever heard of her or seen her. But in this clip at the Golden Globes earlier this year, I believe, there was a segment where she played a joke about all of the winners of the awards and who they gave thanks to. And as you saw, cast and crew, even Mario Lopez. But there seemed to be a subtle jab to God, the creator of the universe, and everybody laughed at it. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to moments like this in pop culture and media. But, you know, she's not the only one to do it, and there's been far worse. And that one, to be honest, really is light. But still, it's there, and oftentimes, like, it's just a jab to Christians who, you know, as what the lingo is today, we'd be like, we're just catching strays. Like, you know, we're not really doing anything to warrant this response or this attention that's being called to us or to God. And I feel like just in the culture that we're in today, in order for just Christians to really just have a presence in this world, and especially in a place like Hollywood, we got to be more vocal and respond to things like this. And so, how should Christians respond? And here I'm about to play a video of how actual Christians on TikTok responded to the comments that Nikki made.
Nikki Glaser mocked God on Golden Globes. Then this happened to the houses of celebrities after 3 days.
Moms are holding strong with 3 shout-outs. God, creator of the universe, 0 mentions. No surprise in this godless town.
And right there is an example of many responses that I saw on Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok, which I am not that very much of a TikTok user. I'll look at it every now and then, but really for like the last 2 years, I have been off TikTok. But those are examples of response that I saw to this moment. And I think you can already see why there's a debate here onto like how should Christians respond. Because the question about that response is there truth? Like, is it true to respond in that way? Is it fruitful to pretty much imply in the video in your response that because you mock God, all your houses in the rest of Hollywood or parts of Los Angeles are burning? And so, like, what my mind went to when all of this went down was, is this really how God would respond to this? I mean, we've definitely seen in the Bible that he responds harshly with fire, Sodom and Gomorrah, to their sin and to their lawlessness and to their unrighteousness. But for a random B-list celebrity, maybe even C-list celebrity in Hollywood to have a joke like that, I mean, it is national or global. People may be watching it from another country, and to be openly mocked like that, Would God respond by burning LA? And that's the debate we're going to be getting to. And so this whole episode is going to be garnered around like 5 questions I think that need to be asked and answered for the sake of Christians and responding to a moment like this in a way that can be fruitful and be a good witness to others. And that first question being, why does Hollywood often mock God, faith, or our gratitude toward him? Why do they always go to mock God? And what the really answer here, the second question was going to be, should Christians be offended or surprised? And so we can knock 2 birds out with stones right here. God tells us, or Jesus tells us during the Last Supper, that the world will hate you because it first hated me. And so in that way, should Christians be offended or surprised? I mean, if we're going to take offense to it, I don't think it should sit well. Like if we're just kind of okay with comments being made about God, I think there's a question with yourself that needs to be asked. But surprised? No, we should not be surprised because Jesus warned us about stuff like this. The world hated him, so they will hate us, mock us, and make fun of any sort of gratitude that we return back to Jesus and back to God. And we find all that in John 18. Everything I just said about what Jesus told the disciples during the Last Supper, all of that is found in John 18. Like, there should be no surprise at all that the world mocks us, that they mock God, and that the two cannot combine. Albeit, there's definitely changes that, especially in Christian movie production or circulation or opportunity in Hollywood. Think of like the last 10 years. We've gotten great movies like Jesus Revolution, produced by Lionsgate. I think Lionsgate also produced that movie about the For King and Country family and their move from Australia to the States. And then we have what's came out. Let's think of shows. The Chosen has been really successful. Like, there has been Christian media, Christian movies, production that in Hollywood and studios are being successful. And so that's changing. And people may go back to the 2000s. I saw a video the other day. I can't remember the creator's name, but he looked at movies like The Passion of the Christ, which came out in 2004, I believe, as the start of a Christian revolution of production in Hollywood. And so there is growth in that, like, there is changing happening, but it will never be genuinely accepted or revered from everybody. And so in the case where any offense should be taken, let's look at Colossians 4 verses 5 through 6. And so what Colossians 4 verses 5 and 6 say is, walk in wisdom toward outsiders, making the best use of the time. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. And so why do I bring that up? Because if we're taking offense to it, and this is a podcast about how Christians should respond in the pop culture and being a witness and presence in there, we should talk about how to respond in the face of offense from a different person that doesn't share the same beliefs as us. When sitting in the face of offense, even though there is changes happening with production of Christian content, we should still continue to do what the Bible teaches us in Colossians, is to walk in wisdom, be wise. Like, I think be wise here takes me to the heart of 1 Peter, and where Peter talks about be sober-minded, be clear in your thinking, be present with your thoughts and your mind and how you are living as a Christian. And with that, you can make the best time or the use of your best time. And so let your speech always be gracious. And I think that's what's going to separate. Because as I think First Peter also teaches us, is that we are to be holy because God is holy, for Christ is holy. And so to be set apart and different from the world, and to imitate Christ, be gracious, and to know how to respond to everyone. And so then we talked about what is the appropriate way to respond, to be gracious, to be clear-minded and present with your thoughts, and not just to rebuttal and fury. So what are more ways that we could respond? And I don't think responding in any outrage. So like, here's what I have in my notes: public outrage, private prayer, or with silence and godly living. Let's just go through those kinds of responses, and which could be good out of those three, and which are the ones you should avoid. And so that's where I'm going with this whole public outrage. And I don't think any outrage is edifying for anybody. To build up a group of people, I don't think any sort of outrage will be what should come out of there. And then, so there's definitely power in prayer. I have verses Matthew 5, 43 and 44 noted down. You can go look those up. And just through the power of prayer, just praying for people, praying for our nation, as we can learn about from last episode, but also pray specifically for just the culture that's in Hollywood. And this is how, like Nikki, what we've seen from Nikki, that this is what light it gets you, of people looking back at her as someone who is mocking of faith and a religion. And being in prayer for that, like in James 5, the prayer of a righteous person is a good thing. It's helpful. It's edifying. And so definitely power in prayer there, but also in our personal conversations, because being doers of the word, as James says. And so as we're going through the word in this podcast and talking about this topic, let's be doers of what I am convicted that these things that I'm saying should be practiced. And I will not be perfect, but I will try. And then so taking this into our personal conversations, we should be intentional and personable, and that's good. And it requires more discipline, because we're face to face in person, real life, and we can pray anywhere to ourselves with other people. But this intentionality forces us to be in front of those people, and so that's where I get personable. And so that's part of that. And so that's part of that third thing, is godly living. And I think when you partner that, the personable, godly living, intentionality with people in conversation, and also with the power of prayer for the overall topic of just the culture in Hollywood, there's definitely edification that can come from it. And so what we've got thus far is, how should Christians respond? Is that we should respond with a gracious tongue, with intentionality and personal godly living, and then also just be clear-minded, be present with what's going on, like know what's happening. And you can tell from the last episode that the sober-minded for First Peter, I think, is so important, and sticks out a lot to me. And then so going back to where we first started with these whole questions is, what are the dangers of Christians mocking unbelievers in return, or being dismissive? And I just think the biggest danger is just ruining your witness. Being called to be set apart, a peculiar people, like in First Peter. I went on a mission trip to New York a couple summers ago, and I went through First Peter, and it was so good for me that summer. So I remember a lot. We were called to be a peculiar people, set apart from the world. And here's the thing: if someone knows that you're a believer and knows that you're a Christian, and but then they see how you respond to things, and you respond with revenge, with, what's the word that I used? Return, with mocking of some sorts, being dismissive, not being intentional, and not be gracious. What does that look like to you? That person that isn't a Christian but knows that you are, will look at you and be like, oh, that's a Christian, that's how they respond. That doesn't seem like some sort of devotion. I mean, I don't know. I want to avoid big words just to fit the role of an unbeliever that's not going to use big churchy words. But, oh, that's the kind of religion or God that you follow, and that's how you react with people. Why would I ever want to be associated with that? And so that's what your witness is your testimony. You're testifying not just through your mouth, but through your actions, and of what it means to be a Christian and what Christ has done in your life. And so if you respond with that, you could possibly ruin your witness, and we will not be good examples of Christ or be the bright lamps like from Matthew 5 to shine on other people. If we're not being good witnesses, it's like what Matthew 5 says of we're just covering ourselves under a basket to where our light is blocked and no one can see the light. And so that's really the whole heart in this of how Christians should respond, is that you never respond to mockery with mockery or dismission or ungraciousness. And so the final question, and the whole what I started off with here that I think we should get to the bottom of, is when the LA wildfires happened after this moment, should Christians look to that as God's divine judgment? And that's how he responds to that. And let's look at Luke 13. Let's look at Luke 13, 1 through 5. There were some present at that very time who told him about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mingled with their sacrifices. And he answered them, do you think that these Galileans were worse sinners than all the other Galileans because they suffered in this way? No, I tell you, but unless you repent, you will all likewise perish. Or those 18 on whom the tower in Siloam fell and killed them, do you think that they were worse offenders than all the others who lived in Jerusalem? No, I tell you, but unless you repent, you will all likewise perish. And so what's the message here? And what happened is Jesus talks about Galilean sin, and then a different group of Galileans that sinned, but they perished by a tower falling on top of them. And so is this Jesus saying that that because they did not repent from their sin, and this was his punishment, or the Father's punishment for their sin? And I think what really the point here is that no, the tragedy of a tower falling over them as God's divine judgment is just ridiculous, and that the true meaning is Jesus warns not to interpret this tragedy as targeted punishment, but just to see them as reminders to repent. Because I think he's trying to illustrate that their fate is the same as someone who didn't do as bad things, and that their sin and the result of their death, their spiritual death for sure, and obviously as humans we have an end, and so we're going to have a physical death, but for these other Galileans that Jesus is talking to, they'll end up the same even if that didn't happen to them. And so just looking at this example, I think it's very similar. I don't think God brought upon these LA wildfires, this natural disaster, specifically for the punishment of Nikki Glaser mocking him, and then the rest of the room, other celebrities in Hollywood, cheering her on for her joke. I think us as Christians, what we should see about God and learn from God from this whole event is that he and from this verse, that he does not judge by burning. He doesn't seem like, that just doesn't seem accurate and consistent with the text that we talked about. And because I think it's in the same accordance that, like, it's just a reminder for us to repent, and that hopefully for Nikki Glaser, that it's a reminder for her to repent. And so just the final words of encouragement are just going to be some verses that I'm going to read through. First, going with Galatians 6. Galatians 6, 7. Sorry. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that he will also reap. The next one is Psalm 2, 1 through 4. Where it just says, nations rage against God, but he laughs at their rebellion. The next verse is Matthew 5, 11 through 12. Blessed are you when others revile you for Christ's sake. And then 1 Peter 3, 15 through 16. Be ready to give an answer with gentleness and respect. And as we're just wrapping up this episode, and have said a bunch of different things and lost track and gone off on things, but just to reel it back in, and just for the point of this video and for this podcast episode, is just to say that we can have rest because God is not mocked, but us as Christians have an opportunity to be gracious and shine the light on other people in moments like this. It should not be opportunities for outrage. It should be opportunities to preach the gospel. All right, everybody, that's the end of this episode. So glad that you made it and that you got to listen to just this discussion and to this point I brought forth. And if you agree with me or disagree with me, leave your comments down below. And just a reminder that if you have not listened to the Charlie Kirk episode, go back and listen to that just to hear some good word from middle school pastor at my church, John David Fortenberry, and then Dima Mixon, who is just a very smart guy, especially in politics, and also because of his faith, he's able to bring those together and bring a lot of just good topics and truth to the conversation. And so here's the part where I give y'all a heads up on the next episode. We're going to continue talking about Hollywood, but we're going to dive in to certain movies like Harry Potter and Wicked, some that are probably very, very relevant when it comes to what Christians are allowed and not allowed to watch. And so that's going to be the topic of conversation next episode, is what's the line to draw at movies that a Christian, let's say from any range, should be able to watch or not watch. And so once again, guys, thank you for joining me today, and I hope you have a good one. Peace out.